Thank you guys for tuning in. Today's episode, I'm going to talk about something that I have never publicly shared, something that has affected me up until this point in my life, and something that I can now talk about because I did overcome it. So let's get into it. Okay, I'm going to take you all the way back to when I was 18. I was in high school, and this was my senior year. I just graduated. Things are going good. I got accepted into college. I was going to college in the fall. Things were great. I was dating this guy, and he was great. In the beginning, he was great. He adored me. We would go to the movies. We would just chill at my mom's house. Now, I was living at my mom's house too, but we would just hang out. He just loved to be around me, and I think that was something I really, really wanted at that time. You know, being 18, having someone up your butt. So things were just great. I was super excited to just be going to college and just starting this new journey in life. And I remember there was a conversation me and my ex-boyfriend at the time had. And he was like, "Oh, you're going to leave me. You're going to go meet someone else, you know?" And I'm just like, "No, why are you thinking like this?" And to me, the crazy part is the college that I was going to was literally 30 minutes from my hometown. So to me, I'm thinking no, why are you thinking like this? So I just kind of brushed that off. He would just say little stuff like that. He was happy for me, but also he would make little comments. So just kind of fast forward to the summertime. Now, I've been doing hair since I've been in high school. And I had a client over my mom's house. I would do hair in my mom's living room. And I remember it was so hot that day. Now, my mom did not have central air. And so it was just so hot. And I was in the living room doing hair. And, being a hairstylist, sometimes you don't eat. So I was just feeling really sick. I'm just oh my God, I feel like I'm about to pass out. So I stopped on the client's head, and I went to go get a banana. I think it was a banana or something to put in my stomach real quick. Got through her hair, and I'm just sitting there talking. I'm in the living room, and then me and my sister was talking. I don't know what happened, but we were playing around, and she just hit me in my chest. And I was oh my gosh, the pain that I felt, it just felt, just someone just stabbed me with a million knives. It just hurt so bad. And I was almost in tears. And I got so mad at Kayla for that. And I was just oh my God, I'm hurting so bad. And so she's just looking at me you're being dramatic, but I was hurting really bad. So I'm talking to my cousin by the end of that day. I'm telling her yeah, I was feeling sick doing hair. Then my chest just hurts really bad. And she's like, "Girl, you're pregnant." And I'm like, "What?" She was like, "You're pregnant." And so I'm like, "No." She's like, "You need to take a pregnancy test." So I'm like, "I'm fine. I'll take one." Now, mind you, I practice safe sex. So I used condoms, of course. And then also I was on the birth control pill. Now, I will say this as a disclaimer. I was not good with the pill. So sometimes I would miss days. Sometimes I would miss I would skip a day, have to double up, whatever. But to me, I was on it. I will also say that I was sexually active at 18, but it wasn't I wasn't having sex every day. Okay. I'm living at my mom's house. It wasn't just something that was like in regular routine for me. So I just thought, like, okay, I'm on birth control and I'm using protection. There is no way that I am pregnant. So my cousin, the next day, she buys a pregnancy test. So I'm just like, okay, like, I'll take it. Mind you, I didn't feel these symptoms the next day. So in my head, I'm just like, okay, whatever. We go to my Aunt Linda's house and she like gives me the test. I go in the bathroom. Now it's just me and her. Nobody knows what's going on. And I take the test and I come out and I literally, just the look on my face, she just looked at me and I was like, let's go outside. And I remember I sat there on like the stoop, like the street, this little stoop. And I cried and I cried and I cried. And I'm like, I don't know how. Like, I don't know how. Now, of course, people say, of course, you have sex. That's how you get pregnant. But for me, I thought I was protecting myself. I thought that I did everything that I needed to do. And I was just thinking like, okay, like, how did this happen? This is just crazy. Like, oh my goodness, like, I had all these barriers up. How did this happen? And so I remember I cried probably for about like a good hour. Okay. And then I was just like, I was just in such disbelief. I'm like, I can't do this. Like, I'm not ready. Now, I had called my ex-boyfriend shortly after I found out. And the same day I called him and I'm talking to him and I'm crying. He's like, what's wrong? And I'm like, I'm pregnant. And phone got silent for a second. And then he started laughing, like just laughing hysterically. And I couldn't understand. Like, for me, I was just like, what's funny? Like, I'm really torn up about this. One, because I'm like, I have to tell my family I'm probably not going to go to college, and just life is just going to be so different for me. And he was like, oh, I knew you were pregnant. And I'm like, how so? And he said, I poked a hole in the condom. And at that point, I got quiet. And just all these feelings of like betrayal, like, how could you? Why would you do something like this? Like, everything just started to really hit me. And I know I just hung up. I couldn't believe it. Like, and so I told my cousin, and she was just like, oh my goodness, like, how can he do this? Like, she was so supportive of me, but like, she was in shock as well. And so I had to think of something. I was like, I didn't tell anybody yet. It's only my cousin Brandy. She was the only person that knew. And I'm just like, I gotta have an abortion. I can't have this baby. Now, the guy I was with, the relationship was good, but I had so many issues around this time, like infidelity, him talking to other people, me catching like just certain things. And I knew like we were probably going to come to an end, because I was like putting up with so much and I was tired of it too. And so I, told my cousin, like, like, I want to get an abortion. And I will say this, she was so supportive of my decision. I love Brandy. Anything that I ever talked to her about, like, she was there. And it's so, so important to have people like that in your life, to like be able to express and share, hard situations with. So we go, we're like looking around at like some places. Now, mind you, I'm 18. I don't have no job. I don't have no car. Like, I don't know how this was going to happen. I just knew that this was the path that I wanted to take. I knew I wasn't ready. I knew that, like, I was still a kid at heart. I had a lot of growing to do. I was 18 and I was just young. All my friends, everybody, nobody had cars. Nobody had cars at this time. Like, cars wasn't a thing. Like, buses, walking, and riding your bike was a thing. So I remember Jeff. I met Jeff through Brandy, but Jeff, he actually did have a car, and he was the other person that knew, because I asked him, can he take me? Now, there was no abortion clinics in Erie. The closest one was in Pittsburgh. So I had to find a way to get down there, right? Now I'm 18, no money. The next thing was trying to get the money. And this is something that I apologize to my family, my mother. I've never told anybody, any of my family, close friends, like, this story, because it had me, like, I was so ashamed to talk about it. And I honestly, at the time, being 18, I did not want to be persuaded. And I just couldn't deal with, like, being crucified for something that I felt like I didn't do wrong. But I did feel wrong at the same time. Hopefully that makes sense. Like, I felt wrong because how can I let someone betray me like this? But at the same time, I just didn't feel like talking about it with anybody. And so I had a graduation party, and my mom raised all this money for me. It was probably about like $700 maybe. And this was like the first time I actually had money in my account. The first time I actually was like, oh, like $700 was a lot of money back then, especially not having a job. And so she was just like, oh, like, put this in your account. You could use this for college. I had to use my graduation money to get an abortion. And I remember like calling and just having to go through the emotions of like, am I doing the right thing? Should I tell somebody? Should I not? And I remember calling the clinic, and you have to have, like, support person, or just going through the procedure. You have to have someone there. So of course my cousin Brandy was there. And I remember going up there. It was a very traumatic experience, because you sit through counseling, then you talk to like a psychiatrist, then it's like you go through the steps, and they actually walk you through what they're going to do. And it's just, I don't know, for me it was like, I can't believe I'm doing this, and I can't believe this has happened to me. Like, I'm in this situation. So I went through the process. Now, I didn't wait too long. I was only 5-6 weeks when I went. So I didn't make this decision at like 5 months or something, or 4 months. It was something that was like quick. I was like really stuck on getting this done. I didn't want to change my mind or think too much about it. So that happened. I was very shaken up after having an abortion. I was very, very, very wary of like trusting anybody. And that has affected me. And I didn't realize it affected me throughout my relationship. So touching on getting an abortion, and then, in college, like, I had a relationship with a guy, and I was scared to be like intimate. I was scared. Now, it's probably a good thing. Now I'm looking back now, like, good. You weren't out here just messing with anybody. You weren't out here just like, just being sexually active with guys that you're in a relationship with. But like, this kind of grew as I got older, where like I would feel a certain way, I would be scared to fully trust, another guy. And it's really hard to talk about because, it was really hard to talk about when I was going through it, because I don't think that, abortions there's people that get them and they're perfectly fine. And then there's people like me who has had one before, and it just affected me in a way of like being betrayed. It affected me in a way of like being scared to get pregnant again, not wanting to go through that process. And, it can happen. It happens to me. I was on birth control. I thought I used protection, and it still happened to me. And so some of my relationships, like looking back, I noticed that like I would be scared to be intimate. I would be scared. I would not fully want to indulge in that part of the relationship, because I always would say, I do not want to get pregnant. I do not want to have kids. And so that went on for a couple years. And then there was a time period where I did suppress it. I suppressed me getting an abortion to the point where like I didn't talk about it. I didn't think about it. I just act like it didn't happen, right? And so it was fine. I was just really extra precautious. I'm like, okay, let me, jumping into a relationship in my late 20s. I'm like, okay, like just don't talk about it. And so I didn't, and I just act like it didn't happen. And then I remember the guy that I'm with now is my husband. I'm married. And, when I converted and gave my life to Christ, there was a lot of things that I needed to clean up. And I still suppress the whole abortion thing. That's something I still like, that was suppressed. So I'm working on just like forgiveness and having faith in God and learning who God was. And just, I was in this era of like just trying to build my relationship with God. And this was before my husband. This was kind of where like me and my husband connected. But I was in this like thing of being transformed, like being made new. But I never thought or it crossed my mind that me being pregnant. So in the Bible, it talks about being fruitful and multiplying, and just being intimate with your spouse. Like that's in God's will. Like that's what God wants you to do in your marriage. And so I remember talking to my husband about, just what I had went through in the past, and him being so supportive and listening and understanding. And it's crazy because he shared like he knew a few girls that had gotten abortions and he didn't realize the effects. And so it did affect me all the way up until, that point. And I remember, and this is something where this is why I wanted to talk about this, because even if you suppress it, it's going to come back. It's going to come back. Like it's always there. And so for me, I suppressed this whole abortion thing. I remember like, it was just like people would talk about it. I won't say anything. I won't have a comment. I won't say, oh, you should. I just didn't say anything. Don't know nothing about it. Won't talk about it. And so I remember, I'm a God-fearing woman. I love God. I have a relationship with God. But when I got pregnant with my first child, I struggled so much with like believing that God had forgiven me for what I've done. Now, there's people that have probably done horrible things. And like I said, in the culture that I live in, abortions are just, some people just get them on a regular and it's just overlooked. But for me, I always had this like guilt of I've done something just horrendous. Like this was something that it sat with me. And so when I got pregnant, I just kept telling myself, something is going to happen. Something bad is going to happen. I'm going to have to repay for what I did over 12 years ago, or 10 years ago, 12 years ago. I'm going to have to repay. Something's going to happen. Like life can't be this great for me, knowing of what I've done. So I like buried this skeleton. I've being made new in all areas, but like I held on to this guilt, like it had me strapped in chains when it came to having a child. And so throughout my pregnancy, I worried. I thought like I'm going to die during childbirth. My child's going to die. Like I literally have to repay for the sin that I have caused, which is a crazy way of thinking. But honestly, when you have done something you feel guilty about, you want to fully believe that God has forgiven you, that you're forgiven for all your sins. And that was one sin that I buried, that I did not talk about, that I did not share. But God knows what I did, and I know what I did. And so when it came down to it, I worried a lot. And okay, I remember I was in a labor and delivery room, and I said, okay, I prayed. And I'm still up until this point, like I'm trusting God in all aspects of my life, but with this particular thing, I said, well, I'm like ready. I'm ready if whatever the punishment is. And I remember though, I wanted to play gospel music in my delivery room, and I was just like, all right, God, I'm with you. You're with me. Like, let's roll. And I had one of the best labor and delivery experiences. Like, it just, okay, I did have epidural, so I did not feel any pain. But I also, it was so peaceful in here. I knew God was in that room. I didn't experience any pain. I didn't have any crazy things happen where I was like, oh my God, I'm dying. Everything just went good, and I was able to leave the hospital with my baby, and life has been great. And so I would sit and think, and it is true. The one thing that helped me overcome this guilt is really truly believing that God has forgiven me for all my sins. I gave my life, and he has forgiven me, and no sin is greater than the other. And it was so hard for me to understand that, because I buried this one thing that I did, and God has blessed me. And I wanted to talk about this because I'm pregnant now. So I am full of a little bit of emotions, but I've had such a wonderful pregnancy again. Now, the second time around, I did not doubt. I didn't say, God, okay, this one, I didn't go back. I didn't retract. I just believe that God is there for me. God loves me and he has forgiven me. And that was how I was able to overcome something that I've done years ago, 13 years ago now, but something that I've done 13 years ago that has stayed with me all the way up until I was pregnant. And I keep saying 13 years ago. I need to get my math together. 15 years ago, I was 18. I'm 33. Something that I've done 15 years ago has lived on with me all this time. And so me sharing this story, I wanted to bring awareness because I know there is females that will go through this experience, will hold that guilt, and will hang on to it. And I know everyone deals with it differently, but one thing that did help me was ultimately having this conversation with God and allowing God to just show me that my sins are forgiven. He showed me all these doubts and worries and everything that I was having in my mind that was replaying, that was causing me to have very, very little faith and just not really believe he forgave me for this. He showed me. And right then and there, I said, you know what? God was in this room. He's forgiven me. And he showed me. He showed me by just blessing me throughout life and in this aspect of being a mother and having children and not having such a hard pregnancy and a hard labor and delivery. He has showed me that you are forgiven for this. And I would encourage for the ladies, talk to God, have that conversation. If you are a woman of Christ, if you're not, first learn about Jesus and give your life to God, and the weights will be lifted off. Now, it did take a while for me to believe that the weight was lifted off, but God ultimately showed me. And there was no better way that he could show me by the birth of my daughter. But this was really hard to talk about. But thank you for listening and tuning in. And I'll be sure to share more with you guys.